I found that people involved with the Hizmet movement are just extremely positive, respectful, and committed to a certain kind of integrity and action. Problems of the world working toward My name's Maggie Herzig. I came to know the Boston Dialogue Foundation and the Turkish Cultural Center and Peace Islands Institute through many avenues. And one is my family, another is my work, and another is my faith. So I could introduce myself in any of those ways. In terms of my family, I have a Jewish husband and a Muslim son and a Muslim daughter-in-law and grandchildren, and a daughter who's United Church of Christ, and I go to a Unitarian Universalist church. So you can see that interfaith dialogue is part of my life. In my work, I design and facilitate dialogues across various kinds of divides, whether they're religious, political, ideological. And in my faith, I'm a Unitarian Universalist committed to understanding across differences, and find that my faith and the people I've met associated with the Hizmet movement have a lot of similarities in terms of our values and commitments. And so I've enjoyed friendships and contacts across my community and the Hizmet movement. I'm not deeply educated about Fethullah Gulen, but I've come to know about him and the movement through the people that I've met. And I think that's the best indicator of the values that a leader or a movement has, is the behavior of the people who are inspired by that movement. And I can tell you that the people I've met that have been inspired by Fethullah Gulen and the movement are kind, hospitable, very open-minded, curious, respectful. And one thing that I notice is that they don't present themselves in terms of what they're against or who they don't like. They present themselves 100% through who they are and what they care about and what their values are. And that's unusual in this world. You know, often people say, oh, you know, we're Democrat, we don't like the Republicans, or we're Republicans, we don't like the Democrats, or whatever. And I found that people involved with the Hizmet movement are just extremely positive, respectful, and committed to a certain kind of integrity and action, and very competent at figuring out how to spread who they are, while also being very interested in who others are. I always see kind of a balance, a willingness to say, here's who we are, we like for people to understand who we are, but we're really interested in what you do, what you care about. And that's an admirable quality, I think. I've been impressed with what I've learned about Fethullah Gulen. I am not by any means a scholar, but again, I've gotten to know about what he stands for through the people who've been inspired by him. I think, well, a number of things have impressed me. One is the combination of having a powerful vision, and a vision that can, you know, upset the powers that be, right? Very powerful vision, and to be very humble. That's my sense of him, anyway. that he's not a flashy person who has a big ego. He's a person who is very grounded and seems to want to see these ideas take root and make a real difference in people's lives. So what's most significant to me, this is going to sound a little corny maybe, is the basis in love. You know, a lot of people do social action, a lot of people care about education, but the way it comes from a spirit of love is very impressive. I think, you know, the great religions like to feel that that's where they're coming from. And yet, in the real world, with all of the tensions and competitions and so forth, it doesn't always shine through. The Hizmet movement, I have felt that spiritual base in love and in unity shines through in the way people behave, the way people teach, the way people do interfaith dialogue. It's there and palpable, that sense of love. They certainly counteract the negative images. And I was going to say negative stereotypes, but some of the negative images are just true because certain groups claim that they are Muslims. They claim that Islamic name and so forth, and yet the Islam that I know doesn't condone. And I know Fethullah Gulen recently, issued a statement about ISIS and so forth. I know that people involved in this movement, and all the Muslims I know in the Boston area, are horrified by so many of the actions globally of the extreme groups who really are not behaving in accordance with the Quran. And so the need for Muslims all over the world who do represent Islam to be known is great. You know, before 9/11, a lot of Americans, you'd ask them, what's Islam? They might remember something that they were taught in 10th grade. But there was very little knowledge of Islam. And now you see in the paper all the time, these events and violence and so forth. And so it's so incredibly important for people who are living Islam in a way that is open-minded, loving, sort of looking to engage in the world in a very positive way. That's so important to get out there, and I think the Hizmet movement has been exemplary in doing that. This is an aspect of the Hizmet movement that has appealed to me and engaged me. I think I would describe the Hizmet movement as very flexible in its approach to dialogue. It's not like it's got a cookie cutter model. This is what we do. We get together, we do this. There's, book discussions, social events, and more sort of structured dialogue at times, at least in what we did together with Sally, and partly because I come from, ideas about structuring conversations. We did some conversations that were more structured about political matters that are usually kind of hard to talk about what each person felt proud of about being in America now, or being an American, what disturbed us. These got to be kind of deep conversations that took advantage of the fact that we had these different perspectives of somebody who grew up in this country or somebody who came to school here 2 years ago, So we were able to go kind of deep, not just about spiritual matters, but just about what it felt like to be in the world now and to be based here. So, so flexibility of approach is one thing that's impressed me. the commitment to education is an attractive part of the Hizmet movement to me, because the attitudes and values that people form over the course of their life are often, very much shaped when they're young. And if you're brought up in a world where, there are good guys and bad guys, and you're right, you're wrong, you're smart, you're not smart, all those dichotomies that can suffuse a culture are really damaging to the future, because those people grow up, many of them grow up in wonderful ways because they've had other influences. But you see in the media and in public life in this country that tendency to polarize, to demonize those who are different, and you see it in religious groups. You've got the right version of God and you've got the wrong version, or your practices are right and wrong, And so to start really young in encouraging open-mindedness and curiosity, and preparing young people to live in a global world. 50 years ago, you might have just had to prepare your children to deal with a 50-mile radius, or 100 years ago. And now we're all interconnected, whether it's because of the potential of climate change or nuclear war, or, there are so many things that can challenge humankind that do not respect national borders. And there are, it seems like endless appetites for war. So given those challenges in the world, if children are not prepared to engage with the world, to learn about science, to learn, I know in the schools we toured, the kids were learning, doing their science studies in English, because if you're going to be doing science internationally, that's the language you kind of have to work in. And so there was that sense of preparedness for a future that's the one we're going to live in, not a future that was conceived 50 years ago. Taking the issues and problems of the world and working toward solutions, making a difference, through, largely at that point, through education was what I was very aware of, and in the sciences in particular. More recently, being involved in a few of the Peace Island events, I can see that there's also just the social justice work on the ground, dealing with so many different problems in society, with poverty or whatever, and that sort of rounds out the picture of the movement as very spiritual and personal, oriented to engaging in the world in education, and also just through social action wherever it's needed. The charitable work that's done as part of the Hizmet movement, I think, is really important, not only for the people who are helped by it, but for the image of Islam in this country. Because various faith groups have had their history of doing that kind of work, but since the Muslim community in the U.S. has grown more recently, I think there has been a bit of a tendency to kind of hunker down and pay a lot of attention to building your institutions, building mosques, building the community, and so forth, and less outward looking social action, or the social action has been toward earthquake victims in Pakistan or whatever. But I think one way that connections get made with people from other religious groups is when you see a shared commitment to supporting anyone of any religion to get through tough times.
I find that the Hizmet movement is very compatible with a number of different religions on a worldwide basis. They're very rational, they're very dedicated, they're very faithful. They're very caring. I think I enjoy being around them.
Again, I can only say that the outlook of Hizmet is universal, and their concern is with humanity. Their charitable works, as far as I can see, are similarly inspired.